My name is Carol Selden, and together with Karen Hansen, we serve as co-presidents of New Canaan Beautification League, a nonprofit volunteer group dedicated to the beautification of our community and to providing opportunities like this to increase knowledge of gardening, conservation, and horticulture. A big good morning and welcome to everybody to our February program on perennial gardening with our special guest speaker, Roy Diblik. Through the wonders of webinar, absolutely no worries about weather, road conditions, so sit back, sip your coffee, enjoy your tea, and a wonderful presentation. Special thanks as always to Patricia Spagani, our Zoom guru. We're happy to be joined by so many of our NCBL members, including Kathleen Murphy, friend of mine, and our very newest member. Sending shout outs to members of the Gardeners, Garden Club of New Canaan, as well as Wellfleet and Chatham Garden Clubs in Massachusetts. Warm greetings also to the Gardening Committee at Edge Hill Senior Living Community in Stanford, and Friends of Titan with professional programs at NYBG and all friends near, far, and who are with us today. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about Titan, member of our board and an active volunteer for Beautification League. She is the owner of Titan Designs, a boutique design studio that specializes in residential landscape design. We're very lucky to have her as a member. Ty holds a Bachelor of Science degree in horticulture from Cornell University, landscape design certification from New York Botanical Garden, and it is an accredited organic land care professional from the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Connecticut. She previously co-owned a floral design studio in Tribeca, Manhattan. She loves to garden and share her great love of designs and the beauty of plant communities with her clients and fellow gardeners. So I can't think of a better person today to do the introduction for our special speaker, Roy Diblik. Take it away, Ty.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, members and friends of the New Canaan Beautification League. It's my pleasure to welcome Roy Diblik today. Roy is a recognized perennial grower, plant expert, designer, author, speaker, and prairie whisperer. To our members who are familiar with beautification project at the mailbox drop-off behind me, the planting, would it surprise you to know that the planting was inspired by Roy's concept of sustainable plant communities with maintenance, while reducing maintenance through design? You will hear this again and again today from Roy, and you can find out more about it from his book, The Know Maintenance Perennial Garden, available at Elm Street Bookstore in town and wherever books are sold. Roy is also has a highly educational YouTube channel, Roy Diblik, and you'll find it. Before I introduce Roy, I would like to ask our audience two questions. Patricia, how many of you have been to the High Line in New York City? If you could kindly answer the poll on your screen. And how many of you are familiar or have seen the movie 5 Seasons with Pete Rudolph, the Dutch garden designer for the High Line? You may recognize Roy's from the movie with Pete. Patricia, when would I see the poll result? Okay.
They're going to let everyone, excuse me, they're just about done answering. So just give me a second.
Sure. The High Line was not Pete's first project in the US or outside Europe. It was the Lorry Garden, a rooftop garden in Millennium Park in Chicago. Pete needed a plantsman and a grower for the plants for the Lorry Garden, and he happened to call Roy, and the rest is history. Roy has been working with Pete ever since, including providing plants for the Highline, Delaware Botanic Garden, and Bell's Isles in Detroit. Roy is also the designer behind Arts Institute of Chicago, the Shed Aquarium, and many other urban gardens and residential projects. Roy has spent more than 40 years of growing plants, studying plants, enjoying plants. He's the co-owner of Know Maintenance Perennial Farm, the nursery behind the plants of the projects I mentioned. I cannot think of a better person to teach us or show us about perennial gardens and maintenance than the person who wrote the book on the plants, designing the plants, and who cares for the gardens. Please join me in welcoming Roy Diblik today. So according to my poll, 65 of you have been to the Highline and enjoy it, and 35 of you hope to go to the Highline, and 19% of you have seen the movie 5 seasons, and 81 of you have not. Thank you. Roy?
Oh, thanks. Let me. Hi, everybody. After hearing Ty's and everyone's acknowledgement of who I guess I am, I'm just overwhelmed by who I am. Someday I'm gonna have to step aside and meet myself because I have no idea. You know, when you do things day by day, year by year, and with person by person, you really don't see that many things going on. But it is exciting to have lived a life for 41 years with plants and growing. Being a grower first helped me. I'm an outdoor ed teacher. I never had a horticultural class. I worked with kids from Chicago and took them out to forest preserves in the 70s. And I just started growing plants in 78 and thought, why not? Why not look at other ways of getting involved socially with other living things besides humans? And then get humans involved in the aspect of how to live and grow and enjoy associating with plants and plant communities. So I think I've grown probably 16 million perennials since 1978. And by learning from the plants, I've probably killed over 1 million of them just by trying to come to know them. So it was a sacrifice I think they made working with this young guy that didn't know anything, knowing that with patience and time, I would come to know and understand them more than just as entertainment. So I start off with this first picture, and I'm just trying to look at how do we have a conversation within community about living with plants. And it starts off with, this is the style that I've come to know through being immersed in prairie, remnant prairies, not commercial prairies. So around Illinois, Wisconsin, there's so many remnant little moments of prairie left, and they've inspired me to look at how plants live socially. So through the next few minutes and moments, I'll take you through things I've done. And I'm not saying that this is what everybody should do. It's just my experiences learning the language of plants and understanding how plants have shown me how they'd like to live on Earth and how they'd like to live socially with each other, just like we do as people. We're social beings, and we've experienced that our whole lives, how to live closely and well, how to hug and how to love others. This is the second picture. Anyway, when I look at social systems of living, this is the Art Institute. And as you can see, I have goals and objectives. My first goal is to encourage plants to be healthy living socially in a community. And I look at that basically by looking at the needs of each particular plant that I chose and got excited about putting into the garden. And as you can see, the first goal is to minimize labor. I don't want gardening to be laborious, and labor comes from weeding. So when you look at plants and how they knit together tightly in our temperate zone, you see that when you reduce exposed soil to sunlight, you minimize weed competition almost by 80 to 90%, because agricultural weeds cannot germinate without sunlight hitting the earth. So this is a goal here. This is called I call a suppression garden. This is June 1st at the Art Institute, and we've minimized weeding already by 80% by simply putting plants together tightly. So sometimes that's where I have to question. I questioned our practices of gardening, like 18-inch spacing. Why did we created spacing 24-inch, 18-inch simply because we just thought that was necessary. We didn't really have a solution or a reason for spacing plants. We just did it and applied that as a general practice. So when you look at, this is the boreal forest floor for the southernmost boreal forest in the United States. It's in Door County, Wisconsin at the ridges. So when you stand on that boreal forest floor and you stand there, you're on the healthiest place on earth. There's no other place you can be. There's other places you can be, but if you're in Door County, there's no other place in Door County, Wisconsin where you can be in a healthier place. Because this boreal forest floor has 14 to 16 species of plants per square meter, and that's a healthy place. These plants have lived there since the glaciers left, intermingling and finding ways to live responsibly and well with each other, never complaining, never arguing with each other, never having issues with each other, but mingling together in healthy, beautiful ways. And this is what I mean by remnants. When I look at a remnant native population, each remnant says, Roy, learn from me. Here's how we live. Here's how we socialize. Here's how we live together. So here's my two questions, and it's not questions that need to be answered. They're self-discovery questions. I think when I look at how do I change, I don't change by people telling me what to do. That's that human reaction to rebel. Like if I told you, I want you to leave your house and move to Rockford, Illinois, there's nothing wrong with Rockford, Illinois, but you would rebel. I'm not leaving my house. This is where I live. So when we're told, well, we have self-discovery in our lives, wow. Change occurs everywhere with self-discovery. So the question is, what's the value of knowledge of plants over awareness of plants? Everybody's aware of plants, and everyone's aware of why, oh, I love it because it's blue. I love it because it blooms in July. I love it because my neighbor has it. And that's kind of an awareness. So like I'm aware of the planet Venus. I have no knowledge of it. I don't know anything about Venus. I can't tell you anything about its atmosphere, but it's anything. And sometimes if we don't have knowledge of plants, if we have more awareness than we do knowledge, we don't know how to put the plants in the ground so they live well. We don't know the conditions they live in. We don't know the social systems they've grown up in. We don't understand their growth rate and their growth habit. And what we do is we turn gardening into yard work. And gardening's never been yard work. Yard work was created in the 1950s to sell you chemicals, to get you away from your house, to see the USA in your Chevrolet. You don't want to be outside laboring around the house. You want to go, you want to get out, you want to see the world. So, and basically the language was changed to sell you things. And we're still doing that. We want you to buy the newest plant, the pinkest pot, the best kind of gardening gloves, the sharpest shovel. Gardening is about what's in your heart and what's about your relationships to other living things. And it's having knowledge of those plants, just like knowledge of friends and people in your neighborhood. The other question then, which plant can you name or know that has never been true to itself? I can't name one plant I've ever grown over 41 years that was never true to itself. I can name about 6,432 people that I've met that have changed their minds daily about who they want to be and how they want to be, what they want to do. So humans, we're just that's our nature, is to decide one day we're this way, the next day we'll be that way. But every plant you've ever touched, you've ever held, you've ever looked at has always been true to itself. It has its own nature, and it will never change that nature. Not one Rudbeckia has ever come up to me in 41 years and said, Roy, I've been a Rudbeckia for 10 years. Couldn't I be a salvia? Salvias are so lucky. They get to be blue. I always have to be orangish yellow. That's never happened in my life. So when we come to ask these questions, knowledge of plants and knowing that plants are true to themselves, that they will never mislead us, that's very important. It's very important to you, to everyone gardening. It's very important to the plants so they can have a good life in the earth when we plant them. So this is our typical public planting: weed, wood chip, and replace. We take plants, we put them on 24-inch centers, 18-inch centers. They never get to touch. We never let plants touch each other. We surround them with wood, which we have no reason why we do that. We've just practiced for so long. There's not a plant on earth that genetically has ever grown in accumulated wood on the planet. Yet we have this practice of surrounding them with wood, spend a lot of money to keep the weeds out, and then totally ignore it because there's no respect for this place. You see the people walking by, they don't care about this area. We've developed a culture of neat and tidy. If we can keep all the landscapes neat and tidy and hire people to come out at a great expense to keep it neat and tidy, well, that must be beautiful. When this really isn't beautiful and not healthy, and that's not good for all the other living creatures that like to associate with plants, the birds, the butterflies, the insects, the pollinators. They're not going to show up here. It's like if you do all your shopping in your neighborhood, you get all your food from a Citgo station. They have food, but you're not going to have 15,000 choices as you would at a big food store. And then the other thing is identity. Where is this place? We've homogenized America. I can go to Boston. When I was in Boston, it doesn't look any different than Kansas City horticulturally. There's some spots there that are beautiful, but they're much older spots. I go to Kansas City, it looks like St. Louis. I go to Minneapolis, it looks like Madison, Wisconsin. We've homogenized America. We've taken away the identity each of us could have in our community based on the plant relationships that were in our community prior to us living there. And then this is what happens with wood. All the contractors decide everything has to be mulch because that's how they make money sending their children to college, by spreading wood around every plant. They throw wood over the top of the crown of the plant. Now, how is that plant supposed to push through that accumulated wood? It's got to take all its new growth, all its energy, and try to push through that wood and that's just the cultural application of wood. Wood does not oxidize quickly. One layer upon another layer upon another layer, the wood turns to fiberboard. And what does fiberboard do when it's laid on the earth? It smothers the living beings in the soil. All the living beings that are in that earth cannot breathe. There's no air exchange and it cannot get moisture through a heavy rainfall. And most of all, when that wood turns to fiberboard after years of accumulation and not oxidizing quickly, the crown of a perennial cannot push new growth through it. It chokes the perennials to death. And here's an example. Look at this poor hosta pushing its way through fiberboard, through accumulated wood, fighting its way for sunlight. And unfortunately, what happens as soon as the hosta pushes its way through it, guess who shows up? The landscape contractor with another load of shredded wood to put on top of the hosta. We have this endless cycle of weed, wood chip, and replace, weed, wood chip, and replace. And many of the perennials, given if they could live in their own leaf fall and their leaf and stem fall, like they've done for hundreds of thousands of years, as when they've lived on Earth, there's not one Native American tribe in Wisconsin that wood chipped the prairies. There's not one Native American tribe that had Native American blowers blowing leaves out of the kettle moraine forest and taking the leaves to the Native American landfill. We've disrupted a system of living. We put our own way of being on a system of living, and we've caused every plant that we believe we love to suffer, to not have a full life, to not live healthy with others. And we've deprived ourselves of regional beauty. But the best part is we're in such a transformational period in horticulture now, it's all coming back. This is on a beautiful way, a beautiful arch, an arch heading into sustainable planting, thoughtful planting, and the knowledge of plants. And I'm happy to share with everyone I know these opportunities. So let's look at something. Recognizing wood mulch is used so freely as a component of our planting practices, the art of inventive planting has diminished, creating typical plant patterns that are randomly repeated. This exhaustive practice limits the uniqueness of personality and place. So that's just a thought of what's happened over the years with wood. And here's our model. This is remnant prairies in the Midwest. And again, when I wander through, I find opportunities for thinking and seeing how plants intermingle together, looking at percentages of planting. And this is another remnant prairie, the beautiful fall, the fall colors, the textures. And when we visit these sites, we can't help but be moved emotionally. So it's all about workability. when we design something and put something together, workability, that's the condition and performance of our actions. It's anything we do, it's the condition and performance of the actions we take. That something we do will have workability. We'll have a way to be cared and loved and nurtured. So design is very important to create that condition of workability. There's a lot of designs that just fall apart right away because the poor placement of plants, that there's no effort you could put in to make the gardens healthy simply because the plants were chosen incorrectly and they don't respond to each other in a healthy way when they grow into each other. So here's no workability. Here's a picture you might see in a magazine. There's no way you can care for this unless you sit there on a chair all day, pruning the boxwood, digging the dahlias, watering the astilbe. There's just too much to do. There's too many different things to deal with. This has no workability at all. But yet it's used in a lot of our magazines to inspire us of what to do in our own gardens in the spring. And here's absolutely no workability. There's 27 plants at $17 a plant planted, and entertainment here. You get about 4 weeks of entertainment in the fall with the garden mums. And then the person here tried to be contemporary, the landscape company. They put a few kale in. Well, let's do some contemporary things. Let's put some kale in. So this cost of 27 times 17 for 4 weeks of entertainment, this isn't doable. But yet it's practiced still continuously. But again, people are being more thoughtful, saying, well, maybe there's a more beneficial use of our time and money and creating a healthier place for plants to be. And planting without affection. When we do something that has no affection, we should be present always to creating healthy spaces. This is prairie dropseed in a parking lot surrounded by wood. These plants are declining. There's the wood is accumulating around the crown, and people that get out of their cars, they're not moved emotionally by this at all. They walk right by it. There's no feeling. Like when you looked at the planting behind Ty, oh my God, the first thing I saw was that beautiful garden that she was sitting in front of. Emotionally, I was moved as soon as the screen came on by something beautiful. And here's a simple beginning. When I look at plant communities, it's that prairie dropseed you saw in the previous picture, same plant, interplanted with alliums. This is a simple plant community, both liking dry soil, similar needs, and characteristics that accent each other. The allium grows right through the sprabolus, and then the sprabolus hides the lower dormant foliage of the allium. So let's look at two components of a young plant. If you pick a plant up off a bench in a pot, these are the key things to putting the plant in the ground with other plants to get them to live well together. It's called growth rate and growth habit. It's the same thing that applies to all living things. Humans have growth rates and a growth habit. All animals, everything has a growth rate and a growth habit from youth to maturity. And when you take a plant that you buy at a nursery and it's in a 6-inch or a 4.5-inch pot, that's a young child. So you're taking this young child home that moved you emotionally. So you have to say, what is the growth rate and growth habit of the plant? And that establishment of the newly planted plants and maturing, it's how they grow into each other from youth to maturity that establishes the wonderful life they'll have sharing sunlight together to collect energy, to keep their health and well-being. So I'll show you some examples of this. This is the prairie dropseed, and you can see the dropseed, the grass allowing sunlight to come through narrow foliage, so it shares sunlight with the Stakey's humula. So this is an example of a healthy community. And let's talk about how to get to that point. Again, it's the light coming through the narrow foliage of the grass and the foliage of the Stakey's picking up the sunlight that filters through the airy grass. It's sharing of sunlight and also creating nutrients for each other by living and dying of their roots. So growth rate and growth habit are consequential to placing young plants in the earth. How plants will grow into each other from youth to maturity determines their lifestyle, and it determines inputs, human inputs. The amount of time you spend in the garden is determined by how the plants grow into each other in a healthy way. So let's look at growth rate quickly. This is early April. This is a salvia. It's about 3 inches tall. So it's the first, second week in April, the salvia is about 3 inches tall. Here's mid-June. the plant's 20 to 24 inches tall. So in the month of April, the month of May, and 2 weeks in June, in about 8 to 9 weeks, the growth rate of that plant is almost 21 inches. So, and every plant we grow has that growth rate. So we can understand the growth rate of every plant we pick up and take home. And then when you look at the growth habit, it's a mounding growth habit, which means the plant has grown as wide, excuse me, as wide as it is tall. So you look at growth habit and growth rate. Gotta get a sip of tea. Sorry. And let's look at another plant. Growth rate. This is Echinacea purpurea, mid-April. It's about 2 to 3 inches tall. Early July, it's 30 to 36 inches tall. So in about 10 weeks, the plant has grown from 3 inches tall. It's grown 34 inches in 10 weeks. And it's flowering also as the salvia is flowering. So in a 10-week period, it's gone from 3 inches to 36 inches. And let's look at the growth habit. This is vertical, not mounding, because it's taller than it is wide. So right away, we have two plants. We've looked at their growth rate, and we looked at contrasting growth habits. So then the idea is, how can we combine these? Well, the idea, first of all, I want to emphasize, if you come to know 20 plants that you have affection for, so if you like 20 plants, know how they develop from youth to maturity, then you will begin creating healthy relationships. And the best part is not only healthy relationships, but lasting relationships. Don't overwhelm yourself by wanting to know every plant you see. Just like people, you probably have good friends, people that you cherish in your life. You might have 5, 10, 15 really good friends who you can share your life with. Then you have associates, people you associate with every day. You might have thousands of associates, but they're not your true friends. They're good associates. So when you come to know 20 plants and you know them well, growth rate and growth habit, that's when you're on your way to developing a healthy garden and lasting relationships with yourself and with the plants in the garden. And it's just the beginning. That doesn't mean if you know 20 plants well, you can't keep adding to that. It's beginning the possibilities and opportunities for yourself to become the loving gardener. And here's a way I approach this. It's very simple. In fact, this is the best time to do it now that you have 24 inches of snow on the ground. You sit at a table after your snow is shoveled and you feel good indoors, and you make some tea, or you have like at night, I'll have a glass of wine and maybe one of my favorite brownies to sit with. And I draw a grid. This is like about 60, 70 square feet. And I take two plants, you know well. And the first grid, I put a circle and a triangle. The circle is Cecilary, the allium is a triangle. And I space them about a foot apart to 15 inches apart. That might seem close, but because they have similar growth habits and growth rates, they can grow into each other and share sunlight well. So they'll grow into each other in a healthy way. And then on the second grid, I just simply put a circle around the plant representing how much it will grow the first year by the following June. And when I put that circle around the plant, in around 7 seconds to 10 seconds, I've predicted a year into the future. All those plants will mingle together in 1 year. And I can look at the spacing and see what spaces I might have. And it's just an interpretation. And what this actually is, it's a way to work with your mind and get your mind on a thought process of growth rate and growth habit, growth rate and growth habit, growth rate and growth habit of every plant. And when you put this on a grid with your pencil and paper and your eraser, if you don't like one too close, you can move it because you want to put more bulbs in. Or you can move something out. Say you want to add a Coreopsis zagreb, you might move 2 out because the zagreb has a faster growth rate than the allium summer beauty. But it's a thought process. Gardening is very emotional. And we sometimes put the plants together emotionally, but we're not putting them together thoughtfully. And this way, and especially now with 24 inches of snow on the ground, where are you going to go? And if you do this for 15 minutes, you'll do it for 5 hours. It's always hard to begin something because it's something we've never done. And that's why you need the brownie too. The brownie might keep you there for 15 minutes with the glass of wine. The glass of wine might keep you there for a half hour. Oop, I lost my connection with you. Okay. So in the previous picture, I showed you the grid. Here's how you come to know the grid into reality. These are the patterns we've had on the grid. And then I look in reality, when I put the young plants in the ground with spacing, I look at how they will grow into each other in reality. So the grid gives you a good template to move into the next moment. And that's the actual planting of the plants. And you can see where two communities meet, one grid meets another grid or another community. That's where there's always a battle for space and for light. So if you look at, then you see like in the one, the aster on that one to the left, that will grow a little faster than the campanula. And it might shade out the campanula slightly in 3 to 4 years, but that might be okay. If it shades one of the campanulas out and there's an opening there, that might be an opportunity for bulbs. But if you decide you want the campanula there, you take out one of the asters. And the cool thing about that, that's called gardening. It's doing things because you want to, not because you have to. And there's again, this another view of the early planting. I call them the children, putting the children in the ground, how they'll relate to each other as they
Hi,
go from
Roy.
youth to maturity. Yeah.
Excuse me, it's Patricia. I think when you had a little glitch there, you brought us back up. Can you try to stop sharing and then reshare your screen and see if that clears it? Because you brought up, there we go. So that got
Okay.
us. All right, let's start. Yes, that should clear it. Thank you.
My back?
We see you fine and we see you sharing. I think that,
Okay.
there we go. Thank you so much.
Okay. No, thanks for helping me. As soon as that turned off, I got nervous. It's not, okay. So did you see, I hope you saw the communities, because I'm not sure how to go backwards either on this. So we'll move forward. I think that's an appropriate way to live. We'll move forward. And if you saw the grids with the paper, pencil, the practice, this is again, the allium, and this is allium and calum. This is June. These are the plants growing into each other. And you see how they're touching? The idea is to get them to collide into each other as quickly. We don't want space between plants, but yet we want the plants to, it's like hugging somebody. You know, there's nothing wrong with being hugged and held. Intimacy is a big part of our life as humans. We don't want to give that up. And plants love intimacy, but they want to be intimate with each other so they're not, one isn't overrunning and shading out the other. So here you see Calamintha, the lower one, and the allium. So let's look at their and this is early June. They're really covering the soil and reducing the sunlight hitting the soil. So they're minimizing weed competition right away. And here they are. I added a little more entertainment. I put in the allium and the calamintha. I put allium atropurpureum through it. And that's what you can do. You can keep enhancing and adding to the garden year after year after year. And the allium lives well with the mounding plants, the calamintha and the allium, both mounding growth habits. And the allium can rise vertically through there in a healthy way and still collect sunlight prior to flowering. And that's the allium and calamintha in bloom. This is early August. What you saw was early June. So early August with the two in bloom, there's not a weed in the world that's going to come through that grouping of plants. So we've minimized weeding. Again, I say about 75, 80% minimized weed competition, unless it's quackgrass, Canadian thistle, or bindweed. That's a whole different approach you'll need to those perennial weeds. But any of the agricultural weeds, they just can't compete in this situation. They can't get sunlight. And here's calamintha. I just want to show you how many different ways you can combine it. If you remember the calamintha with the allium we just saw, here's calamintha with Lobelia syphilitica. Here's calamintha with Rudbeckia speciosa and aster twilight. Here's Calamintha with Salvia East Friesland. Here's Calamintha again with Allium Summer Beauty and Coreopsis Zagreb. And here's Calamintha with Echinacea purpurea and Perovskia Russian Sage. So what you can do, I just showed you all those Calamintha, the white flowers. You can disassemble the Calamintha neighborly grids and use all those plants that were combined with the Calamintha to plant hundreds of new patterns. So I showed you about 6 to 7 plants. You can disassemble those grids and reassemble them in 100 different ways. Isn't that cool? And it's not by buying new plants or having something new to add. It's by redefining the communities and in using similar plant characteristics so the plants can live well together. So your possibilities of combinations are endless. I mean, it's just like the alphabet. There's no 20. We're not depressed because there's no new letters in the alphabet. Look what the possibilities are with 26 letters for words and phrases, sentences, books, everything. So when you come to know the plants, like I said, about 20, wow, it's like buckle up because of all the combinations you can begin to create once you come to know that knowledge of each plant. All plants have an agreeable nature with each other. Just review their growth rate and growth habit as you recombine them. All plants want to live. There's not any plants I know that just are get depressed. I'm had it. This is too much for me. It's simply if they're not in the right place or have the right situation for them. And they made no choice where they live. Every plant that a human picks up and touches is placed by a human. So the plant don't really have a choice of how they live or who they live with. So, and it's all about composition. That's the cool part. It's being the artist in the garden. It's not about the plants individually, even though they're healthy, living beings. It's how you put them. It's like being Monet. You have your Monet moment. It's all about placement of plants in healthy relationships together. This is at Pete Outhoff's house in Holland. Isn't this beautiful? My God, if you're not crying right now, and it's simply 2 plants that have been around since the glaciers left here in Wisconsin, Echinacea purpurea and Echinacea pallida. These aren't new hybrids and in pink pots on some bench with free fertilizer. These are just 2 durable plants put together with good composition, accented by the Perovskia in the back. It's just a beautiful, and they live well together. They share space well together. And look at the Echinacea pallida. This is mingled in with limonium status coming through. And you see that's vertical. You see the Echinaceas are vertical and mounding of the limonium. And here's Echinacea with Agastache and Perovskia. This is Echinacea alba. And here's Perovskia with Coreopsis verticillata golden showers and some Carl Forster in the back. So again, you could take and you can put Echinaceas in with the Coreopsis. You can enhance this group with the white cone flowers in the previous slide. So again, it's so I'm getting too excited. There's no end to the comment. It's thoughtful. Here's Perovskia with a purple cone flower and little blue stem. And these are boulevards I did in Fontana. Here's the shed aquarium. I want to show you the ocean area. We use 2.5-inch containers, 14,000 2.5-inch containers because of budget. We didn't want to, gallons would have cost them $20 a plant. The 2.5-inch pot cost them $1.75. And this is the shed aquarium now. And the reason it did so well is because it had a gardener. Kenny was out there, one man, took care of this for a year, 3 days a week. He knew when to water. He had his Dutch push-pull hoe. It had a gardener. They had a contractor come out, Lance contractor. He had 5 people out there unsupervised, didn't know what to do. The garden declined for 2 years and the shed paid for that. Every year they agreed to a payment with the contractor. The contractor misled them saying they knew what to do, and they didn't know what to do. They know how to keep things neat and tidy. They know how to mow something. They know how to prune something round or square. They know how to pick up the leaves. They're very good at neat and tidy, but they're not gardeners. They just did, the garden was worse every year. And a young group showed up, and it wasn't because they're young. It was because they saw their future as being gardeners. It had nothing to do with their age. It had to do with their passion and their belief in themselves. and they revitalized it. We brought plants out and it's healthy again. And the care for that is from August, there's only 2 people go out there in July and August because the plants are so dense. And there's more of the shed aquarium, the salvias and the calamintha. This is the domes in Milwaukee. This was a planting I did in May, and here it is in August of the same year. And it responded well, not because of anything I did. I placed the plants in a good position to live well, but it was because of Mary, the gardener. She takes care of one of those domes. She's the gardener, horticulture. She was the one that cared and loved these plants. So because of one person, Mary, everything did well. And the plants know it. The plants they're aware of how much they're loved. And all they do is grow and become healthy. And this was the Art Institute. Tom Wolfe was the gardener there for 31 years. He was he knew the urban world and how plants lived in urban situations. So this was in August, late August, and this was the following September. And again, it was because of the gardener. Tom had an affection and knowledge of how to care for these young children. And they respond quickly. There's no amount of slow growth in this. This is, again, the Art Institute, different views with the different patterns mingling together. So let's look at opportunities and possibilities for this, which are endless. Well, let's look at a few. These are areas where in a community I did down in Chicago, they wanted to get rid of string trimming. Every 27 times a year, the mowing people showed up and they had a string trim around all the stop signs, and edging around the tree. So we simply put in perennials. The suppression garden, you knit together quickly. And then you just need 2 people to show up maybe every 2 to 3 weeks instead of every week running string trimmers and blowers and trimming. So this is something they saw the possibilities of. And they liked it because when they come to a stop sign, sometimes you got to honk the horn to get the guy going because they're so caught up in the emotional moment. And this was in Fontana, the boulevards. We did 17,000 square feet of boulevards. They had them with black-eyed Susans and miscanthus and sedum autumn joy, and everything was dying. So I just simply replanted it in 2004, and I interviewed the plants. Here's the situation you're going to live in. What group of you can handle this? So I just picked up plants that would live well together in limited soil, but they had irrigation. And the grass strips were minimizing. Each year we edge more out, so they don't have to trim all those grass strips. So every year it goes closer to the curb. And because some people in the community like the grass strips, they like the framing. So you can't be too dramatic because you have to win the hearts of people in the community too. At least get them all facing the same direction. And these are neighborhood gardens where we get rid of turf on corner lots, or basically people that they want to have a more sensitive way of living at their house than just have, I call it the default landscape. Turf is the default landscape. Traditionally, we don't know what to do. We don't have other options. And it's not our fault. We just don't know what we don't know. And so if we live in a world, I live my life a lot in the world I know about. And I keep reaching into that world of I don't know, so I can expand the way I live. And it's kind of shocking. And the things I find out when I go into that world of I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But these are people that reached out of their box and wanted to know if there was more than turf. Here in Lake Geneva, I do lakefront plantings. And we can do better than this. This is paid for by the community. So here's another meeting that said, what can we do better? And we put in curb cuts. We collect and harvest rainwater. So rainwater isn't something to put in a pipe and put in a bigger pipe to the next community. Then that community puts the even bigger pipe to get it to another community. It's not a waste product anymore. Rainwater is something we want to cherish. And every drop of rain that falls from the sky is a gift. Every drop. And this community looked how to harvest it, collect it. And by doing that, they saved their trout stream. This is in Iowa, in central Iowa, West Union. The goal was to save the trout stream. Young and old got behind that in this little community. And the shopkeepers got together and they care for the plantings outside of their shop. They take care of 57 planters. that they take because it makes their look more attractive. So everybody got on board. And that's the beauty of a conversation within community, to get everybody facing the same direction and have goals and objectives that everybody loves to work towards. So I'm going to briefly touch stewardship, the nurturing and care of the planting from youth to maturity. And we use the Dutch push-pull. I didn't know what these words, the Dutch push-pull. They're not made in America. I've been trying to find someone to make these. It's a stick with a blade, a double-edged blade, a heart diamond shaped. But see the handle he's holding at the end? It's 72 inches tall. The key is you don't have to bend over. We rarely get on the ground to do any weeding. The Dutch hoe, you stand upright. We have a hoeing schedule. I discovered these. Pete Outhoff introduced me to them in Boskop, Holland. I started crying when I saw it because my whole life I was using a farming hoe and bending over, rubbing my back every 50 minutes. And now when we use this, we do warm-up exercises. We strengthen our core. They're very good tools. And we have a hoeing schedule. We can hoe 1,000 square feet in 75 to 85 minutes. We hoe every 14 days from April to mid-June. And by mid-June, the plants take over for their own well-being. They cover the earth, and we can't get in there to hoe anymore because the plantings are so dense. And when they cover the earth and reduce 1,500 foot candles of light, below that, weed seeds can't germinate. So our hoeing is basically take care of the month of May, and we scuff the ground. We don't dig. We don't disturb the soil so we don't bring more weed seeds into play. So in the spring, you just scuff the weeds off, little disturbance to the soil, and then the plants will cover and shade out the planting for the remainder of the year. You'll still have observational weeding. There's a big one over there and a big one like foxtails get through quite easily. So you just pull out the foxtails, but it's much easier than hoeing all season long. And then we mow everything. This is Jesus. I have a mower. This cuts vegetation down at 6 feet tall. It's a little billy goat. We mow everything and we leave all. I'm looking for a leaf fall and stem fall. I called it litter, but I want to get away from that negative sound, letting the plants live in their own debris. But we haul nothing away. We mow it. We grind it up with a mulching mower. This has a mulching blade on it. All the leaf fall and stem fall sit around the plants. And if you look at the plants, they're screaming with joy because they're living in their own leaf fall, leaf and stem fall, as every plant before them has lived on earth, not hauling it away and bringing in wood, especially, or any other product. And I have to say, we use local leaf mulch because, again, this is transformational. People aren't ready to let plants live in their own debris or a leaf fall. Emotionally, a lot of clients around the lake can't handle it. So they're just grown up with mulch. So we put light leaf mulch over the top of this. It's an entertainment more than beneficial for the plants. It entertains humans. So we have to keep our clients entertained. But we do try to our goal is to bring nothing away from a client's house. And then we put bulbs in, and the bulbs come up through the leaf fall and stem fall. And it looks like you're in a meadow in Austria. The background, that brown duff laying there and the bulbs coming through the brown duff. And I learned to do that when I first left leaf litter in 2004. I couldn't handle it. It took me 2 glasses of wine before I could go in the house to think, oh my gosh. And everyone thought I was lazy. Why didn't you rake that up? How come you're leaving it look so bad? But it was the bulbs I put in that the following year when people saw it, they go, how can we do that at our house? The bulbs were the biggest gift to the litter. So gardens give you something technology can't, and it's a live and living connection with yourself and with the earth and with all the little creatures that come into play in the garden. So basically that's the end of my discussion, and I answer questions. And I just wanted to show you the book, and I thank Ty for mentioning it. And also I have a YouTube channel that I'm working on, and I'm just presenting a lot more of the information and processes and interviewing a lot of friends of mine. I think it's good to introduce people that have a thought and are working hard to have a good life with plants. So thank you, everybody. Hi, Roy here. Hey, I want to apologize for all the technical difficulties we had at the end of the show answering questions. So I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. And I hope the answers are help contribute to better gardening and more fun for all of you. And thanks for having me too. I enjoyed myself in the presentation. Thanks. The way I present thoughts to clients is the first thing I do is I get a sense of what their goals and objectives are. I kind of talk to them about what kind of artwork do they like, how do they like to be outside, how do they like to use the outside spaces, do they entertain? So just get a feel for their thoughts, and then after that, talk to them about their time to care for plants in the garden. How much time do they want to spend gardening? And once I get some idea about their activities outside, time they like to spend gardening joyfully, and then we can create a garden based on that, on the time they have to garden, and then try to increase their awareness of the plants as time goes by. No, I don't cut salvias back. I use Salvia wisui predominantly, and I mix other salvias with it, because Salvia wisui blooms beautifully through the fading flowers, the early flowers, so it's very artistic. You can cut salvia back and get rebloom, but to me it's just an extra effort, and it looks like somebody ate the plants. So I have to look at that group of plants chopped down. And I would recommend don't use Salvia May-Night. Salvia May-Night is the last one to rebloom after pruning, and it's also the first one to fall over in higher organic soils. Well, that's a regional question. I would contact someone who has good qualifications that does seeding. I don't do seeding. I seed into seed flats, but I don't seed into open spaces. So I would contact somebody locally that has knowledge of your region and talk to them about the best time to establish plants from seed. I like Salvia cardana. It's similar to East Friesland in characteristics except for the black stems. Has a nice vertical growth habit. It's a good plant, and the dark stems are a nice contrast to early spring bulbs. Yeah, I've written a book, the Know Maintenance Perennial Garden, and in the book I believe I list 74 plants, generally for this region and east and west to some extent, that are easy to grow, that will come to know you as you come to know them. And in the book I put patterns that you can put in the ground to give you a good start. And I also have patterns for shade gardens to begin a shade garden. Well, we use leaf mulch basically in the spring. We put it around perennials very lightly, about an inch or two, because to be honest with you, we try to leave the leaf fall and stem fall in the garden. We mow and string trim it down. And we put the leaf mulch around it basically to entertain humans, because people are used to seeing mulch and they're not used to seeing us leave the leaf fall and stem fall in the garden. So I'd say just put it down in the spring basically to enhance the characteristics of the plants and make people feel good. Well, I would get Calamintha nepeta subspecies nepeta. That's sterile. And you can tell the difference between a reseeding Calamintha and a sterile one. In fact, Calamintha nepeta subspecies nepeta is the only sterile one I know. The leaves are glossy and smooth. If the foliage is pubescent, more than likely that Calamintha reseeds. And for a reseeding Calamintha, if you want to use one, I wouldn't put it in the garden until the garden's 4 to 5 years old, so that it won't reseed everywhere, because it'll be planting it in amongst adults. The groundhogs, depending on the pressure, I can't really help you with groundhogs. It depends on the pressure they provide. Deer, there's all kinds of lists of deer-resistant plants, usually like Perovskias, all the carex, ferns in shade areas. The deer don't eat sedges, the native carex and some of the European sedges, and the deer don't eat ferns. So that would give you a good start. And there's many lists locally that you could check for plants that are deer-resistant in your area. Again, that would be, the dry slopes would be a regional question. seeing what where you live and the length of season, type of soil you have, and your average rainfall per month. But here we use I use prairie drop seeds, Parabolas heterolepis, and Bouteloua curtipendula, and also some of the carex, depending on the light, Carex pennsylvanica can go in sun to shade, and also Carex brevior. That's a plant that's good in dry to slightly average soils. So I would check locally, check with people in your region, and plant tightly too, so the plants knit together quickly. I wouldn't space anything farther than 12 inches apart. I'd go 8 to 10 inches and get it knitted together quickly. Yeah, again, I would pick out plants that fit the conditions you're asking them to live in. Check with your local resources, and then plant them tightly. Don't put them on 12-inch centers, put them on 8 or 10-inch centers. Excuse me, and then keep them watered. Keep them as healthy as you can until they root in. Yeah, ferns would be wonderful. Just make sure you pick out ferns that fit the conditions you're asking them to live in. It's going to be, if it's very dry under the trees and you're not going to be able to supplement the water, choose ferns that live, once established, on dry soil. Oh yeah, you can garden in fact, now I'm doing a YouTube show for my YouTube channel, and you can do a 6 by 6 foot space. You can do a 4 by 4 foot space. So it's all doable. And on my YouTube show, I've got a sedge shade planting that's the circumference of a tree. So you look at the drip line of a tree, the garden goes around the drip line of a tree. I believe it's with Brent Horvath. So you can find it on the YouTube. I think the easiest way to answer that is and I just buy my book. I go in that piece by piece. I could sit here and tell you what it would be, but I'd miss something. And I hate to leave it out. So I try to explain all those practices in my book. And they're very easy to come to know. Those are the best answers I could give you right now. They're very good questions. And I think you can build on hopefully the answers I gave you and just keep creating opportunities for yourself and questioning everything. So thanks again for having me, and take care of yourself.